Admiral James Riker sat alone in his Spartan office aboard the Ghost Fleet's flagship, the mighty dreadnought Olympus. The illuminated holograms of star systems and fleet movements cast an ethereal glow, but Riker's weathered face was etched with deep lines of concern. He had served with the Ghost Fleet for over 2 decades, guiding humanity's most elite military force through countless crises, but the intelligence report now flickering before him filled him with a dread he had never known. "Computer, replay the transmission from Sector 7 Command," Riker said, his voice low and taut. A hologram flickered to life, depicting the young lieutenant from the remote monitoring outpost on Kepler Station. "Admiral Riker, this is Sector 7 Command. We've detected a massive hyperspace emergence approximately 4 light-years from the Ceres colony. Our preliminary scans indicate a fleet in excess of 500 capital ships, accompanied by thousands of smaller escort craft. They appear to be of unknown alien origin and are on an apparent vector towards human-controlled space." Riker's jaw tightened as the lieutenant continued, "Sir, we've never encountered anything like this before. Our best estimates project they will reach the Ceres colony within 72 hours. I'm transmitting all sensor data, but we're going to need the Ghost Fleet's full strength to have any chance of holding them off." With a flick of his hand, Riker dismissed the transmission. His eyes narrowed as he considered the scope of the threat. An alien armada of this size, intent on penetrating the heart of human space, could only mean one thing: total conquest. It had been over a century since humanity had faced an interstellar foe of such magnitude, and the stakes had never been higher. "Computer, initiate emergency recall. Deploy all available Ghost Fleet assets to Sector 7 immediately," Riker commanded, his voice firm and unyielding. Within minutes, the Olympus bridge was a hive of activity as officers relayed orders and technicians scrambled to ready the ship for launch. Admiral Riker strode onto the bridge, his steps measured and resolute. "Status report," he said, his gaze sweeping across the array of displays. "Sir, all Ghost Fleet vessels within 10 light-years have acknowledged the recall order and are converging on Sector 7, reported Captain Samantha Delgado, Riker's second-in-command. "We've also alerted the Colonial Defense Forces and requested immediate reinforcements, but it will take time for their ships to arrive." "Time we may not have," Riker said grimly. "How soon can we have the Olympus and her battle group ready to jump?" "We're at 87% readiness, Admiral," Lieutenant Commander Jamal Abdullah, the Olympus executive officer, replied. "Fusion reactors are primed, weapons systems are online, and the navigational computers are plotting the jump coordinates as we speak. We can be underway in less than 20 minutes." Riker nodded, his steely gaze fixed on the tactical display. "Excellent. Assemble the division commanders in the war room. We need to devise a plan of attack before we arrive at Sector 7. As the senior officers hastened to carry out his orders, Riker allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The Ghost Fleet had been forged in the crucible of humanity's greatest challenges, their skills honed by decades of conflict and sacrifice. But now, they faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered before, an alien force of unimaginable size and power, driven by an insatiable thirst for conquest. Riker clenched his jaw, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the holographic display. "This time," he murmured, "we cannot afford to fail." With that, he turned and strode towards the war room, his steps radiating the unwavering determination that had made him the most feared and respected commander in the Ghost Fleet. The fate of humanity now rested squarely on his shoulders, and he would not falter, no matter the cost. The Olympus emerged from the swirling vortex of the hyperspace jump, its massive bulk dwarfing the surrounding fleet of Ghost Fleet vessels that had converged on Sector 7. Admiral Riker stood on the bridge, his piercing gaze fixed on the tactical display as the latest reports from the colony on Ceres flickered across the screen. "Sir, the alien armada has entered the Ceres system and is deploying its forces," Lieutenant Commander Abdullah reported, his fingers flying across his console. They've overwhelmed the colonial defense grid and are now moving to secure the planet's surface. Riker's jaw tightened. Captain Delgado, assemble the division commanders in the war room. We need to finalize our plan of attack before the aliens can consolidate their hold on Ceres. Moments later, the senior officers of the Ghost Fleet were gathered around the holographic table, their faces etched with grim determination. Riker surveyed the assembled group, his eyes lingering on the young, brilliant chief engineer Emily Takeda. Dr. Takeda, your team has been working around the clock to upgrade our weapons systems. What can you tell us about the capabilities of our new plasma cannons? Takeda stepped forward, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Admiral, the plasma cannons we've developed are capable of delivering devastating long-range strikes against even the largest enemy vessels. Their plasma projectiles can penetrate the most advanced shields and armor with ease. However, the power requirements are immense, and we can only maintain a sustained barrage for a limited duration before needing to recharge the capacitors. Understood, Riker said, nodding. And our point defense systems? Vastly improved, sir, Captain Delgado interjected. We've integrated the latest AI-driven targeting algorithms, and the new railgun turrets can engage and destroy incoming missiles and fighter craft with a level of accuracy it was previously unattainable. Riker's eyes narrowed as he considered the information. Then we'll need to make every shot count. Dr. Takeda, work with Lieutenant Commander Abdullah to ensure our fleet is operating at maximum combat efficiency. Captain Delgado, I want your division to spearhead the initial assault. Your ship's maneuverability and firepower will be critical in blunting the alien advance. The officers nodded, their expressions resolute. Riker turned to face the holographic display, his hands clasped behind his back. The alien armada outnumbers us by a significant margin, but we possess the superior technology and training to overcome their numerical advantage. Our mission is clear. We must hold the Ceres system at all costs, giving the colonial defense forces time to reinforce our position. Riker paused, his gaze sweeping across the faces of his assembled commanders. I know you all have loved ones on Ceres, and the thought of failing them is unthinkable. But I have the utmost faith in your abilities, and I believe that together, we can turn the tide of this battle. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, and Riker allowed himself a grim smile. Then let's get to work. Time is of the essence, and we cannot afford to lose a single moment. Dismissed. As the officers filed out of the war room, Riker remained behind, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. The alien armada was a formidable foe, its sheer size and firepower enough to overwhelm even the most seasoned military forces. But the Ghost Fleet had weathered countless storms, and Riker was determined to add this one to their list of victories. He reached out, his fingers tracing the projected paths of the Ghost Fleet's divisions as they maneuvered to engage the enemy. Ceres will not fall, he murmured, his voice laced with conviction. Not while the honorable Ghost Fleet still stands. With that, Riker turned and strode from the war room, his steps filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The battle for Ceres was about to begin, and he would ensure that humanity's defenders were more than ready to meet the challenge. The Ceres colony hung in the void, its shimmering cities and sprawling industrial complexes a testament to humanity's resilience and ingenuity. But as the alien armada emerged from the darkness, those gleaming metropolises were soon engulfed in a maelstrom of destruction. Lieutenant Commander Jamal Abdullah gripped the arms of his command chair, his knuckles white, as he watched the enemy vessels pour through the system's outer defenses. All ships, prepare for immediate engagement. Target the lead elements and focus all firepower on breaking their advance. The Ghost Fleet's battle group surged forward, their sleek silhouettes cutting through the void with ruthless purpose. At their head, the mighty dreadnought Olympus led the charge, its twin plasma cannons already unleashing devastatingly accurate barrages that tore through the alien formation. Hostile vessels have entered firing range, reported Captain Delgado, her eyes narrowed in concentration, initiating evasive maneuvers and targeting enemy cruisers. The Ghost Fleet warships danced through the hail of enemy fire, their advanced maneuvering systems allowing them to evade the clumsy salvos of the alien vessels. Delgado's frigate, the Valiant, weaved between the larger ships, its railgun turrets shredding the enemy fighters that swarmed around them. "We've got multiple hull breaches on a cruiser Archer," one of Delgado's officers shouted. "They're venting atmosphere and taking heavy casualties." Riker's jaw tightened as he watched the tactical display. "Send the Olympus to provide immediate assistance. We can't afford to lose any of our capital ships." The dreadnought surged forward, its powerful engines propelling it through the chaotic battle. Lieutenant Commander Abdullah targeted the alien cruiser's weak points, raining down a withering barrage of plasma fire that punched through its shields and tore the ship apart. "The Archer is stabilized, sir," Delgado reported, "but we've lost contact with the frigate's Vanguard and Endeavor. Their transponders have gone dark." Riker's eyes narrowed. "Damn it. What's their status?" "Unknown, sir," Abdullah replied, his voice grim. "They were engaged by a pair of enemy dreadnoughts. We've lost all telemetry from that sector of the battlefield." Riker's hands clenched into fists as he watched the holographic display. The Ghost Fleet was inflicting heavy casualties on the alien armada, but the sheer scale of the enemy force was proving to be a formidable challenge. If they couldn't break the alien advance soon, the Ceres colony would be overrun. "Admiral, the Colonial Defense Forces are reporting that the alien ground troops have breached the outer perimeter," a junior officer called out. "They're requesting immediate air support to hold the line." Riker's eyes narrowed. "Captain Delgado, take your division and provide close air support to the colonial forces. Lieutenant Commander Abdullah, maintain the defense of the system's inner orbit. We need to buy time for the reinforcements to arrive." "Understood, sir," Delgado replied, her voice taut with determination. "The Valiant and her squadron will make a direct run on the alien ground forces. We'll give those colonists the support they need." The Valiant and its escort ships peeled away from the main battle, their engines burning bright as they raced towards the beleaguered colony. Riker watched them go, his expression grim. "Computer, patch me through to all Ghost Fleet vessels," he commanded. "This is Admiral Riker. The battle for Ceres has begun, and the fate of our people now rests upon our shoulders. We are the last line of defense against this alien onslaught. Let our courage and determination be an inspiration to all who witness our struggle. For the glory of humanity, we will not falter." A chorus of affirmations echoed across the Olympus bridge, and Riker turned his attention back to the tactical display. The Ghost Fleet's divisions were fighting with every ounce of their skill and resolve, but the alien forces continued to press their assault. Riker knew that in the end, it would come down to a test of wills, and he was determined that humanity would emerge victorious. The battle for Ceres raged on, with the Ghost Fleet forces fighting a desperate holding action against the relentless alien onslaught. Admiral Riker watched the tactical displays with a mix of grim determination and growing concern. Despite the Ghost Fleet's best efforts, the sheer numerical superiority of the alien invaders was slowly but surely grinding them down. "Lieutenant Commander Abdullah, status report," Riker barked, his eyes narrowing. "Sir, we've managed to hold the inner orbital defenses, but our capital ships are taking heavy damage," Abdullah replied, his fingers flying across his console. "The Olympus forward shields are at 47% and falling. We can't sustain this level of attrition much longer." Riker's jaw tightened. "Where's Captain Delgado's division? Have they been able to provide any relief to the colonial forces on the ground?" "The Valiant and her squadron are engaged in fierce combat over the colony's main city," Abdullah reported. "They're inflicting heavy casualties on the alien ground troops, but the sheer number of enemy units is overwhelming the colonial defenses. I'm afraid they're not going to be able to hold out much longer." Riker's expression darkened. "Damn it. We're running out of time. Inform Captain Delgado that she is to pull her forces back to the Olympus position. We need to regroup and devise a new strategy." As Abdullah relayed the orders, Riker's gaze shifted to the holographic display, his mind racing. They had to find a way to turn the tide of the battle, or everything they had fought for would be lost. Suddenly, a realization struck him, and he whirled towards the bridge's science station. "Dr. Miley, I need your expertise. Can the Olympus plasma cannons be modified to deliver a concentrated burst of antimatter energy?" The young chief scientist, her face flushed with exertion, looked up in surprise. "Antimatter, sir. That would be tremendously powerful, but also extremely risky. The containment and targeting systems would have to be flawless, or the results could be catastrophic." Riker's expression hardened. "I'm well aware of the risks, Doctor. But at this point, we have no choice. I need you and your team to work around the clock to make it happen. We have to find a way to break the aliens' momentum before they overwhelm us completely." My Lai hesitated for a moment, then nodded firmly. "Understood, Admiral. I'll assemble my best people and get started immediately." As the scientist hurried away, Riker turned his attention back to the battle. The Valiant and her escort ships were now pulling back towards the Olympus position, their hulls scarred by enemy fire. Captain Delgado's face was grim as she appeared on the view screen. "Admiral, the colonial forces are holding on, but they won't last much longer. We've inflicted heavy casualties on the alien ground troops, but there's simply too many of them. If we don't find a way to turn the tide soon, Ceres will fall." Riker's expression was resolute. "Hold your position, Captain. Dr. Lai is working on a new weapon system that may give us the edge we need. I need you and your division to be ready to strike the moment it's ready." Delgado nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Understood, sir. The Valiant and her crew stand ready." As the communication link closed, Riker turned to Abdullah. "Lieutenant Commander, maintain a tight defensive perimeter around the Olympus. We're going to need every ounce of firepower we can muster for what's to come." Abdullah saluted sharply. "Aye, sir. The Ghost Fleet will not falter, not while we still draw breath." Riker allowed himself a grim smile. "That's what I'm counting on, Jamal. This battle is far from over." With that, he strode towards the research lab, his mind already racing with the implications of My Lai's potential breakthrough. If the Olympus plasma cannons could be reconfigured to harness the power of antimatter, it might just give them the edge they needed to turn the tide of the battle. And Riker was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. The once vibrant skies over Ceres had been transformed into a maelstrom of searing plasma bolts and twisted shrapnel as the Ghost Fleet fought a desperate delaying action against the alien invaders. Admiral Riker watched the battle unfold on the Olympus bridge, his gaze fixed on the tactical displays with a mixture of grim determination and growing unease. "Dr. Lai, report," Riker barked, his eyes narrowing as he watched the Valiant and her escort ships engage the enemy ground forces. "Is the Olympus antimatter cannon ready?" My Lai, her face streaked with soot and fatigue, nodded grimly. "We've managed to recalibrate the plasma systems to channel an intense burst of antimatter energy, Admiral. But the targeting and containment systems are still unstable. One wrong move, and the entire ship could be vaporized." Riker's jaw tightened. "We don't have the luxury of waiting any longer, Doctor. The colonial forces are buckling under the alien onslaught. Initiate the firing sequence and target the enemy capital ships. I want to see them reduced to atoms." With a nod, Mei Li turned and barked a series of orders to her team. Riker watched anxiously as the Olympus' massive plasma cannons began to glow with a brilliant, otherworldly light. The air on the bridge crackled with tension as the weapon charged, the very fabric of space distorting around it. "Firing solution locked, Admiral," Mei Lai reported, her voice laced with a mixture of trepidation and resolve. "Antimatter cannon primed and ready to fire on your command." Riker's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the battle raging around them. The Valiant and her squadron were holding their ground against the alien ground troops, but their ammunition and shield strength were steadily dwindling. If they couldn't break the enemy's momentum soon, The colonial forces would be overrun. "Fire," Riker commanded, his voice calm and unwavering. The Olympus plasma cannons erupted in a blinding flash, discharging a concentrated beam of antimatter energy that lanced across the void. The alien capital ships, caught in the path of the devastating weapon, simply ceased to exist, their hulls vaporized in an instant. A cheer went up on the bridge, but Riker's expression remained grim. "Don't celebrate yet, people. That blast may have bought us some time. But the enemy is far from defeated." "Lieutenant Commander Abdullah, what's the status of the colonial forces?" Abdullah's brow furrowed as he studied the incoming reports. "Sir, the Valiant and her escorts are holding the line, but their ammunition and shield reserves are critically low. They won't be able to maintain their position much longer." Riker's jaw tightened. "Understood. Patch me through to Captain Delgado." Delgado's face appeared on the view screen, her eyes wild and her uniform scorched. "Admiral, we're taking heavy casualties down here. The alien ground troops are swarming the city and our defenses are crumbling. We need immediate extraction, or Ceres is lost." Riker's expression was resolute. "Negative, Captain. Your mission is to hold that position at all costs. The Olympus is deploying a squadron of heavy assault shuttles to reinforce your position. They'll provide you with the firepower and troop support you need to hold the line." Delgado's eyes widened. "But, sir, the Olympus can't afford to spare any of its own forces. You're already stretched thin as it is." Riker's gaze hardened. "I'm well aware of the risks, Captain. But the fate of Ceres, and perhaps all of humanity, rests on your shoulders. You and your crew are the last hope for those colonists down there. I have every confidence that you will not fail them." Delgado's expression shifted, her resolve hardening. "Understood, Admiral. The Valiant and her crew will hold this position, no matter the cost." Delgado out. As the communication link closed, Riker turned to Lieutenant Commander Abdullah. "Mobilize every available assault shuttle and deploy them to the Valiant's position. I want those colonists evacuated and their defenses reinforced, even if it means stripping the Olympus to the bone." Abdullah's eyes widened. "Sir, that would leave the Olympus critically vulnerable. We'd be risking the complete destruction of our flagship." Riker's gaze was unwavering. "I'm well aware of the risks, Jamal. But if we lose Ceres, we lose everything. The Ghost Fleet is the last line of defense for humanity, and we cannot afford to fail. Now get those shuttles moving, and may the gods have mercy on us all." As the Olympus assault craft raced towards the beleaguered colony, Riker turned his attention back to the tactical displays, his expression grim but resolute. The fate of the human race now rested on the shoulders of his battered but unbowed crews, and he would be damned if he let them down. The Valiant and her battered escorts fought with a desperate fury, their weapons blazing as they struggled to hold their ground against the relentless alien onslaught. Captain Samantha Delgado gripped the arms of her command chair, her knuckles white as she watched her crew battle with every ounce of their strength. "All batteries, focus your fire on those enemy dropships," she barked, her eyes narrowing. "We can't let them reinforce their ground troops any further." The Valiant's railguns erupted in a flurry of high-velocity rounds, shredding the alien transport craft as they attempted to deploy their deadly cargo. But even as the enemy forces crumpled under the ferocity of the Ghost Fleet's defense, Delgado knew that it was only a temporary respite. "Lieutenant Gutierrez, status report," she called out, her gaze sweeping across the bridge. "Shields at 28% and falling, Captain," the young pilot replied, her voice strained. "We're taking heavy damage from enemy bombardment, and our munitions are nearly depleted." Delgado's jaw tightened. "Damn it. How long can we hold out?" Gutierrez's expression was grim. "At this rate, maybe another 15 minutes, maybe less. We're not going to be able to keep these bastards at bay much longer." Delgado's eyes hardened with determination. "Then we'll make every second count. All hands, prepare for close quarters combat. We're going to show these aliens what the Valiant is made of." As the battered Ghost Fleet vessels braced for the inevitable final assault, Admiral Riker paced the bridge of the Olympus, his brow furrowed in concentration. The battle for Ceres had taken a devastating toll on his forces, and he knew that they were dangerously close to being overwhelmed. "Lieutenant Commander Abdullah, report," he demanded, his voice taut. "Sir, the Valiant and her escorts are holding their ground, but they won't be able to maintain that position much longer," Abdullah replied, his fingers flying across his console. "We've received multiple distress calls from the Colonial Defense Forces. They're being overrun, and the city is on the verge of falling." Riker's expression darkened. "And the reinforcements from the Colonial Defense Fleet? Still several hours out, Admiral," Abdullah reported, his voice grim. "If we can't find a way to turn the tide of this battle soon, Ceres will be lost." Riker's jaw tightened as he considered their options. They had already pushed the Olympus and her crew to the breaking point, and he knew that they couldn't sustain this level of attrition much longer. But surrender was not an option. The fate of the entire human race hung in the balance. Suddenly, a realization struck him, and his eyes widened. "Lieutenant Commander, patch me through to Dr. Lai. I need her in the war room, immediately." Moments later, Mei Lai hurried into the cramped command center, her face etched with a mixture of exhaustion and concern. "Admiral, what is it?" "I'm needed on the bridge to coordinate the antimatter cannon's targeting systems." Riker fixed her with a piercing gaze. "Doctor, I need you to do something for me. Something risky, but potentially game-changing." Mei Lai's brow furrowed. "Sir, I need you to reconfigure the Olympus fusion reactors to overload and detonate in a controlled chain reaction," Riker said, his voice low and urgent. "We'll channel the resulting plasma burst through the antimatter cannon, creating a devastatingly powerful weapon that could turn the tide of this battle." Mei Lai's eyes widened in alarm. "Admiral, that's incredibly dangerous. The containment systems on the antimatter cannon are already pushed to their limits. Adding that kind of power surge could result in a catastrophic failure, destroying the Olympus and everything within a light-year radius." Riker's expression was resolute. "I understand the risks, Doctor, but we're out of options. If we don't find a way to break the aliens' momentum now, Ceres will fall and humanity will be doomed. I need you to do this, Mei Lai, for the sake of everything we hold dear." Mei Lai held Riker's gaze for a long moment, her mind racing. Finally, she nodded, her eyes burning with determination. "Understood, Admiral. I'll get my team working on it immediately." As Mei Lai hurried back to the bridge, Riker turned his attention to the tactical display, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. If this gambit failed, it would mean the end of the Ghost Fleet, and perhaps the end of humanity itself. But if it succeeded, Riker clenched his fists, his expression hardening with resolve. "This ends today," he growled, "for Ceres, and for all we hold dear." The Valiant shuddered violently as another volley of enemy fire pounded her battered shields. Captain Delgado braced herself against the bulkhead, her eyes narrowed in fierce determination. "All batteries, concentrate fire on the alien command vessel," she barked. "If we can take down their flagship, the rest of their forces will be thrown into disarray." The Valiant's remaining weapons unleashed a devastating barrage, their plasma bolts and railgun rounds converging on the towering alien dreadnought. But even as the enemy vessel began to list, Delgado knew that their triumph would be short-lived. "Lieutenant Gutierrez, status report," she demanded, her gaze sweeping across the bridge. "Shields at 12% and failing, Captain," the young pilot replied, her voice taut with strain. "We've sustained critical damage to our primary power systems. We're running on emergency backups, but I don't know how much longer we can hold out." Delgado's jaw tightened. "Damn it. All hands, prepare for boarding actions. We're going to have to fight these bastards off the old-fashioned way." As the Valiant's battered crew braced for the final assault, Admiral Riker paced the war room of the Olympus, his expression grim. The fleet-wide tactical display before him painted a bleak picture. The Ghost Fleet's divisions were faltering, their defenses crumbling under the relentless alien onslaught. "Lieutenant Commander Abdullah, status report," Riker demanded, his voice low and tense. "Sir, the Valiant and her escorts are holding their ground, but they're taking heavy casualties," Abdullah replied, his fingers flying across his console. "The Colonial Defense Forces have been overwhelmed, and the alien ground troops are advancing on the city's primary habitation centers." Riker's jaw clenched, and Dr. Loy's plan. "The Olympus fusion reactors are primed and ready to overload," Abdullah reported, his brow furrowed with concern. "But the targeting and containment systems for the antimatter cannon are still unstable. One wrong move, and the entire ship could be vaporized." Riker's gaze hardened. "We don't have a choice, Jamal. Initiate the sequence and prepare to fire as soon as the targeting lock is confirmed." Abdullah's eyes widened. "Admiral, are you sure about this? The risk is worth it," Riker interrupted, his voice firm. "If we don't stop the alien advance here and now, Ceres will fall, and humanity will be doomed. I won't let that happen, not while there's still breath in my body." Abdullah held Riker's gaze for a long moment, then nodded solemnly. "Understood, sir. Initiating overload sequence. May the gods be with us all." As the Olympus reactors began to hum with growing intensity, Riker turned his attention to the tactical display, his eyes narrowing. The Valiant and her battered escorts were still clinging to their position, their weapons blazing as they fought to hold back the alien onslaught. "Come on, Samantha," Riker murmured, his hands clenched into fists. "Just a little longer. We're going to end this once and for all." Aboard the Valiant, Captain Delgado and her crew fought with a desperate fury, their last reserves of strength pouring into every shot, every thrust of their boarding axes. The alien forces had breached the ship's hull, and the corridors rang with the sounds of close-quarters combat. "Lieutenant Gutierrez, get to the escape pods," Delgado shouted, her voice barely audible over the din of battle. "You and the rest of the crew need to get out of here while you still can." Gutierrez's eyes widened in alarm. "Captain, I'm not leaving you behind." Delgado's expression hardened. "That's an order, Lieutenant. This is my ship, and I won't abandon it. Now go, and don't look back." With a reluctant nod, Gutierrez turned and sprinted towards the escape pods, her heart pounding. As she reached the hatch, she spared one last glance over her shoulder, her eyes glistening with tears. "Good luck, Captain," she whispered, before sealing the hatch and launching into the void. Delgado watched the escape pod disappear, her jaw set with determination. Turning to face the advancing alien troops, she gripped her boarding axe, a grim smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "All right, you bastards," she growled. "Come and get me." Back on the Olympus, Riker's eyes narrowed as the targeting systems locked onto the alien command vessel. "Fire," he commanded, his voice steady and unwavering. The Olympus plasma cannons erupted in a blinding burst of energy, the supercharged antimatter beam lancing across the void. The alien dreadnought, caught in the searing blast, simply disintegrated, its bulky form consumed by the overwhelming power of the Ghost Fleet's desperate gambit. But as the shockwave from the explosion rippled outwards, Riker's expression shifted to one of horror. The Olympus reactors, pushed beyond their limits, were beginning to overload, their containment fields flickering and failing. "Abandon ship," Riker roared, his voice echoing across the bridge. "This is not a drill. All hands, evacuate immediately." As the crew scrambled for the escape pods, Riker cast one last glance at the tactical display, his eyes narrowing. The alien armada, thrown into disarray by the destruction of their flagship, was in full retreat. They had won the battle for Ceres, but at a devastating cost. With a heavy heart, Riker turned and made his way to the nearest escape pod, his mind already racing with the implications of what had just transpired. The Ghost Fleet had triumphed, but the future of humanity now hung in the balance. The Ceres colony, once a shining beacon of human ingenuity and progress, now stood in ruins, its once gleaming cities reduced to smoldering wreckage. But amidst the devastation, a palpable sense of triumph and resilience hung in the air, as the battered but unbowed survivors of the Ghost Fleet's epic struggle emerged from the shadows. Admiral James Riker stood before the assembled crews, his weathered features etched with a mix of sorrow and pride. The loss of the Olympus and her brave crew weighed heavily on his shoulders, but he knew that their sacrifice had not been in vain. "My friends," he began, his voice resonant and filled with conviction, "today we have borne witness to the indomitable spirit of humanity. When faced with an enemy of unimaginable power, we did not falter. We did not surrender. We fought with every fiber of our being, and in the end, we emerged victorious." A cheer rose up from the crowd, the defiant roar of those who had stared into the abyss and refused to blink. Riker raised a hand, silencing them with a solemn gesture. "But our triumph has come at a terrible cost. The Olympus, our mighty flagship, is no more. And with her, we have lost some of our bravest and most cherished comrades. Captain Samantha Delgado, Lieutenant Amelia Gutierrez, and countless others who gave their lives to ensure that Ceres and all that we hold dear would be saved." Riker paused, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "They will be remembered, always, as the heroes who stood tall against the darkness and refused to be broken. Their sacrifice will echo through the ages, an inspiration to all who would dare to defend the light of humanity against the forces of oppression and conquest." The crowd fell silent, the weight of Riker's words settling upon them like a somber mantle. Then, slowly, a single voice rose up, strong and unwavering. "For the Olympus," the voice called out, and soon the cry was taken up by dozens, then hundreds, until the very air seemed to vibrate with the force of their conviction. Riker allowed himself a grim smile, his heart swelling with pride. "Yes, my friends, for the Olympus, and for all that she represented. That honorable Ghost Fleet shall endure, stronger than ever, a shining beacon of hope in the endless void." He turned, gesturing towards the remnants of the Ghost Fleet's battle group, their hulls scarred by the ferocity of the conflict. "These ships, these crews, are the legacy of the Olympus and all who gave their lives to defend our home. From this day forward, they shall be known as the Honorable Ghost Fleet Command, charged with safeguarding the future of humanity wherever it may lead." A roar of approval echoed across the colony, the sound of a people who had stared into the abyss and emerged unbowed. Riker raised his hand, silencing the crowd once more. "But our work is not yet done. The alien armada, though battered and in retreat, still poses a grave threat to our colonies and our way of life. We must be vigilant, we must be prepared, and we must be relentless in our pursuit of those who would seek to extinguish the light of humanity." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled crews, his expression resolute. "And so, I call upon you all, the brave and the true, to join me in this sacred task. Together, we shall forge a new era, one where the name Honorable Ghost Fleet will strike fear into the hearts of our enemies and inspire hope in the souls of our people. For the sake of all that we hold dear, let us stand as one, and face whatever challenges may come, with the unwavering courage and determination that has always defined us." The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, their voices rising in a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the colony. Riker allowed himself a moment of quiet pride, his eyes shining with the knowledge that the legacy of the Olympus, and all who had given their lives to protect it, would live on. As the cheering subsided, Riker turned and strode away, his steps filled with a renewed sense of purpose. That honorable Ghost Fleet had been forged in the crucible of this harrowing battle, and he knew that they would be ready, no matter what the future held. For the sake of humanity, they could not and would not fail.